Hey everyone, this episode is sponsored by Fight Energy. Fight is your all-in-one go-to health drink. Fight is not only just an energy booster, it is a mood booster as well. So with your daily dose of vitamins, nootropics, 0 calories, it is your all-in-one health drink. I drink Fight every day. My clients drink it. Someone you probably know drinks it. And you guys, what I'm offering for as we get into 2025, we're doing a discount for 25% off your first order if you type in LYB. Okay, so we'll know that you came from the podcast, and that way we can make sure you get some Fight Energy and some other little goodies thrown in there too. So if you get a chance, we would love to know which team you are. Are you team strawberry? Are you team blueberry? Hey everyone, welcome to the LYB podcast. On today's episode, we have my man, Ben Tracy. I'm so excited to have you on today. We are just meeting for the first time, so welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I can't believe, let me just preface and say this. When I'm not usually impressed. Okay. I'm not easily impressed by people. And when I saw your stuff on Instagram, and I don't even know how I began following you. I don't know if you did something locally that it popped up and I maybe saw you that way. But I was just like, this is such a cool mission. I'm hyping him up before he's going to introduce himself. But I'm so excited to hear about how this got started and what you just got done doing. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and get into it.
I appreciate that. And it's probably all downhill from here after that introduction. That's a lot to... That's a lot to live up to. But yeah, I mean, I just finished running all the way across the country, which I learned along the way. Less than 400 people have ever done that.
Incredible.
Somebody actually posted different things that are extremely rare. Climbing Mount Everest, 13,000 people had done that. Becoming a Navy SEAL was 9,000. A senator's 2,000. 600 some odd people have gone to space, and less than 400 people have ever run across the country. So it was a difficult thing, obviously physically, but also the logistics of doing something like this and the cost that's associated with it probably dissuades a lot of people who could do the physical side of it. So there's really a lot that went into it.
Yeah, and that's more so what I'm interested in, because the feat of strength, I mean, that's amazing, to do that and to plan it all out and everything like that. But yeah, logistically, because are you from here? Are you from Nashville?
I grew up in a small town in central Illinois, a town of 900 people.
Okay.
Went to college in Chicago, lived up there for a few years afterwards, and then I moved down to Nashville in 2021.
Okay, what brought you here?
Honestly, COVID.
Oh, okay.
Not being able to, they shut the gyms down. They shut Lake Michigan down. They shut the running trails down. I mean, there's a very nice running trail along Lake Michigan in Chicago. They shut that down. And it was like, I want to go a place where I can be outside, I can be with my friends, I can do things. And so that was part of the motivation for moving here. Okay. And then I travel a lot, I fly a lot, going to schools to speak. Yeah. So I still wanted to be in the middle of the country, still kind of, it's 6 hours from where I grew up. So for a lot of reasons, Nashville made sense.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Oh, well, awesome. I love that you're here. So, okay, tell everyone that you ran across the country. Okay. What was the driving factor for that?
Well, it was a couple things. One, working out on the road is extremely difficult. So I was in these hotels and I was lifting a lot at the time. And then you go in these hotels and they've got dumbbells up to 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's this isn't really going to do much. Maybe I'll start to run. So I'm at least then I just bring a pair of running shoes and I can do that. So, and I ran in college, but I was a sprinter. I was made all my friends were distance runners. I made fun of them. I was I will never run distance in my life.
Isn't that wild? And now looking back, you're like, how did this happen?
Yes. The fact that I ran all the way across the country and, 8 years ago when I was in college, if they asked me to run the 400 meter, which is one lap, I would be pissed off about it.
Right.
Is kind of crazy how full circle it's came. Yeah.
It's almost like you can never discount anything. You know how sometimes people say, oh, I'll never do that or whatever. I've always been I'm open to things once, let's at least try it.
Agree.
And then go from there. But I feel the same way because, I grew up dancing. I was a competitive dancer. So to go from that to then getting into strongman competitions, no one would have ever seen that coming. Like literally people, when I like was competing, would like talk to me and say, I never saw this happening, you know? And they didn't mean it to be mean. They were just like, you were very much on stage and glam and, you know, the fake eyelashes and all this stuff. And then now you're like dirty, bruised up, you know, like all that stuff. So you just never know where your path is going to lead. But so I want to know, so when you were in Chicago, did you, like, what was your profession? Like, was it the same?
Yeah. So I've been doing this for like 6 years, going to schools, talking to kids about social media, online safety, predators, cyberbullying, the mental health component, especially with girls, of what they're exposed to, body image issues, things like that. Now these kids are getting fentanyl online, and it's killing kids all over the country, and they think that they're getting, you know, Xanax or Percocet or something, you know, I don't know, harmless, but you know, something that when I was their age, we would have never thought that would take your life, right? And so these drug dealers are literally posting their menu online, and it's easily accessible for these kids. So talking about all those different issues. But the way I got into that line of work actually was I'd worked in politics through college and after, and, you know, running political campaigns in Illinois. And I got a job with a former governor in Illinois to be his kind of personal assistant, traveling, prepping him for all of his public appearances and so forth. Well, I got fired on my first day.
No way.
Yes, because somebody went through my Twitter account from when I was like 17 years old, like 2012. It was like cancel culture. I'd never heard that word, but that's what it was. And it's like Chicago news. I'm in the car with the governor as this all like story starts to break. I'm 23 years old. I mean, he's literally sitting right next to me. And so, like I said, it's Chicago news, this whole thing. And then it's like, my God, like, what do I do now? Like, I have this great resume, you know, college athlete and double major and all these things. But I also now, like, just got fired from this job as, like, the right-hand man to the governor. And so I started going to schools, and I was just talking about that, right?
Wait, and this was all over a tweet?
Yeah, like I had like 5,000 tweets on my Twitter account.
Yeah.
They found 4 or 5 that were, you know, inappropriate jokes tweeted back at friends. When, you know, in 2012, when I, you know, like we didn't have, or at least I didn't have this stuff in middle school, right? So I got onto it at the end of high school, and like we were just fine, like it was just like stream of consciousness jokes, like you weren't thinking about anything beyond that, right? And so, they went through.
Why did they do that? Why did somebody do that?
It was very much a political thing.
Okay.
I won't get into the whole, all the politics of it, but the governor had fired his former staff and brought in a new staff, and I was part of the new staff.
Gotcha.
And he was a private equity guy. He was a billionaire, very close to it, had never worked in government before, never been a politician, ran for governor, became governor. And the people who had helped him become governor, the people who ran his campaign, had ran the government for the first 2.5 years of him being the governor. He fired those people. And he came from the private equity world where you buy a business, you fire, lay off staff, and you never hear from these people again. Well, the people he was firing were political assassins. And so anybody who got brought in with the new group of people were automatically a target. So it was, I mean, there was an element of just wrong place, wrong time.
Right.
And so, in, you know, the hypocrisy of, you know, some of the reporters who like wrote these articles had their own like social media history that was like worse than mine.
Of course.
And, you know, so I had like a decision to make, because I had and still have, even 7 years later, like I have those posts of those people, and most of them have like, you know, cleansed themselves since then. But it was like, you know, I can do the same thing back to them, inevitably get them fired from their job, or I can try to turn this into something positive, right? And so I started going and speaking with college athletic departments and, you know, hey, don't post something that could cost you a job, a career opportunity, what have you. And then some high schools started wanting to hear that message. And then I'm going into these schools, and this is 2018. Like, we know a lot more about the dangers of smartphones and social media now than we did 7 years ago. But these kids are literally coming up to me, and they're showing me their iPhone, and they're talking about predators and cyberbullying
Yeah.
and having their nude photos passed around the school. And, I thought the worst thing that could happen is getting fired from a job and getting your picture on the front page of the Chicago newspaper.
Right.
And then you meet these kids that are having this stuff happen at, 12, 13, 15 years old. And you're like, wow, that's, getting fired from a job is actually far from the worst thing.
Right.
But I had the benefit of, time and reflection and being a little bit older. And so,
Right.
that's part of the message is, and part of the mission with the run too, is beyond spreading awareness is showing a kid, look, you can make a mistake and you can move beyond it.
Yeah.
And so
love
that was super important to me because we've all said and done things we're not proud of. Like if you give a child a phone at 10, 12, 14 years old, like of course some like less than ideal things are going to happen.
Oh yeah. And I just love everything you just said, because it's like at that time, putting myself in those shoes, it's like you feel like it is like it's the end.
For sure.
It's the end of everything.
Yep.
And, so many people that when we talk, because we've had people on the podcast who have talked about suicidal ideation, and that they go and speak to different people, and talk about this a lot, men and women. And I'm just like, in the schools, there has to be more help. Like, and that's something we've talked about before, of like me talking to more schools, like going in and having these conversations. And I've even reached out before and said stuff of like, I would love to talk about like loving your body throughout. And certain areas of Tennessee, when I've asked that to their, to their schools, they're like, it's too, what's the word that they use? But it was too, I don't know what the word is, but like not accepted, I guess. Or it's like too,
Like on the fringe or like too, like, I know the word you're looking for.
Yeah, and it was just like a very disheartening thing. I'm like, no, like everyone needs to hear this. And so when I saw that you were doing this, I was just like, man, this is fantastic, because I wish that someone would have. Dare came to talk to us about drugs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm like some old dude, no offense to them, but like old dudes over here talking, like I can't relate to that.
Right.
I'm 14, 15, whatever. I'm not going to touch it. But then I would go to parties where I was just like negligent. Like I didn't realize it was all around me. I just had no idea. And you know what I mean? And
like they don't teach the things that should be taught in the, the average.
too controversial.
That's what I'm looking for.
There we go. Sorry.
I mean, there is an element of that, right? Like there are probably schools out there that would never have me in still even, 13 years after those things were tweeted, right?
Right.
But I mean, overwhelmingly, most schools will. But, kids the average teenager spends 4.8 hours a day just on social media. Like not screen time or like iPad, homeworks, video game. Like that's just social media. And it's like, in what world would a kid be doing almost 5 hours of anything and we're not educating them on it, especially something that is as dangerous as a smartphone and social media.
Yeah.
And so my thing works well because I'm still younger than most of their parents.
Yes.
And the comment and the personal story.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's the dare officer or the person who drank and drove and hit somebody, right? Like those are two very different things. And most kids are going to get more of a takeaway from the person who drank and drove.
Right.
And that's the difference with social media compared to what they're hearing from their parents at home, who they know, my parents don't know anything about this stuff.
Right.
So that's where it's difficult.
That's the importance of you sharing, or anybody sharing a story like that too, like turning the negative into positive, like you said, because you could have gone one way, but you didn't, and it is needed for people that have actually been through those things, like you said, because the people that you're talking to relate to it more when you've actually been through it. So that's why it's so important for you to tell that story.
Yeah. And this is why it's so interesting, because I've always said because that's why I want to do more public speaking engagements and things, because I'm like, I am 31. I feel like I, have this entrepreneurial spirit. I'm still, young enough where I'm not, like, I did a thing at Vanderbilt a couple months back, and I was looking around, I'm like, man, they're young. Like they were 18. And I'm looking over here looking at my ambassador. I'm like, do I look like I'm like their aunt, or do I look like I'm like their mom? Like what's going on, right? So for the first time. Yeah. And so it was one of those things where I was like, but I've always wanted to get in front of them while it's relevant. And so that's why when I saw that you're doing it, I'm like, this is fantastic. And I feel like you're someone that's very, that you can relate to them and understand in a way that not a lot, can.
Not just that, but the kids have such good BS detectors anyway.
Yes.
And so you can't lie to them.
Yeah.
And so I've never tried. I'm like, these are the issues.
Yeah.
Look, guys, like y'all are growing up in a very different world than your parents grew up in.
Right.
And, there is an element of the controversial where, some parents and schools don't want to talk about the online predators and all these different things. And my response to that is, I didn't give 70% of your fifth graders smartphones.
Right.
Their the parents did that.
Right.
And so I'm trying to help because nobody else is doing it. Right.
Yeah.
And there's 500,000 of these online predators, according to the FBI, 500,000 of these predators active every single day. Yeah. I'm like, if there's 500,000 of those, these kids are on there. Why aren't people talking about this?
And they may not want you to come in, but the kids don't have a choice but to interact with those people, right? They're gonna come across them whether they let you tell them how to deal with it or not.
But a lot of those parents probably think that their kid will be the one that doesn't.
Not my kid. It's the number one. That would never happen in my family.
Well, and it's not even about the kid though. It's about the access to the kid via the predator.
Yes.
For sure.
Right? It's not even about the kid. But so my question was, obviously we want to learn more about your story, but is the way you approach it kind of that it's a tool? Right, because it's like there's only so many safeguards that you can put on it. You have to teach them that like there's a positive way to use it, like you are.
Right.
And then there's this negative side to it. Because like in my head, I'm like, I don't know how you keep them from.
It's a tool and it's a weapon, right? And it's acknowledging that, and it's also do I think a 10-year-old should have an iPhone and TikTok and Snapchat? No, I don't.
Correct.
But there's also an element of, well, you're 16 and all your friends have smartphones and Snapchat, and you don't. Well, you are going to miss out on things. Yeah. And so that's like, I tell parents, I'm like, that's a risk reward analysis that you have to make for your own family. But like the abstinence forever is not realistic either. So what I recommend is introducing it progressively in steps as opposed to, giving a 10-year-old a phone with everything on it. Yeah. Start with a watch, a flip phone. There's some safe starter phones. Give them that. Let them show that they can be responsible. Right. And then maybe it's an iPhone with, YouTube or Instagram. And then, down the road, maybe it's a TikTok or Snapchat.
Exactly. And that's the thing too. So I did this, I don't remember when it was, but I think like 3 or 4 years ago, I tried to do this like initiative where it was like a no filter project where I had people like post a photo with like no filters. Cause this is right when like Snapchat was just like huge and everybody's using it and whatever. And I always hated it. Cause I was like, anything that you say to me that can go away like that, like, I don't know. I just didn't trust it. And it was, and I get it that people like to use and whatever, but then with my nieces and nephews were always in my mind. And I was like, when they have this, like, I just feel like stuff's going to get bad, And so I always looked at it from that lens. So I had deleted it a long time ago. But anyway, it was one of those things where when I did that project, it was because I had read a statistic that had said something along the lines of like 10 to 14, the increasing age of suicide for young girls was like 10 to 14. And I was like, no, I didn't see anything about this in the news. There was nothing really like telling me, like, it was just random that I had come across. And because I was like looking into that project, Yeah. And I had actually gone to a funeral for a 12-year-old. And so it was one of those things where I'm like, this is real. This is happening in nicer counties and nicer, like, it's not just, whatever, and like lower demographic or whatever. And it was just one of those things where I couldn't believe that no one was talking about it. And so with your mission, okay, you get out of the politic world, right? And you're, in Chicago. And so was it one of those things where like, you were just like, I'm going to do this on my own? Did you hire a PR person to help you get into schools? Like, how did you grow a business?
I didn't even know that you could make money speaking, to be totally honest. So the first one, I ran track in college. Mm-hmm. My college track coach calls and he's like, why don't you share this story? Like, I had told him the story privately. And he's like, why don't you share this with an audience? And I was like, dude, this is like 6 months afterwards. Yeah. And I was like, I think it's still a little too soon. I started like a consulting, marketing consulting business right away. So, to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
And luckily I had a pretty good network that I built mostly through politics. Right. And so he's like, will you come talk to the team? And like 6 months in, I was like, no, like, it's still a little too soon. Yeah. Like, I don't know that I want to go down that path.
Right.
And then then maybe a year in, he asked me again, and then I did it. Okay. And the athletic director sat in on it. He's like, this is really good. Mm-hmm. Like, you can get paid. Like, some of these schools have, real budgets for stuff like this. And, and so he got me into a few schools, and it just kind of snowballed from there. But no, I never did a PR firm or anything like that. And it was a lot of word of mouth. And, I had an email list, but really up until the last 6 months, I didn't do much social media or
Right.
marketing.
Okay.
It seemed a little hypocritical to be
yeah.
like, hey, social media is dangerous.
Right.
Also follow me on Instagram.
Yes,
It's like a weird transition.
Yeah.
But I realized going in these schools and doing these parent presentations in the evenings, I talk to the kids during the day, the parents at night. Well, the parents who most need to hear this
Yeah.
message are not the ones who are going to show up at their kid's school at 7:00 on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
It's the mom who's at home single mom at
Right.
home scrolling on Instagram who gave her kid an iPad because it's a good babysitter and hasn't maybe considered all those dangers.
Yeah.
And so that was part of the reason for the run too, is just saying, hey, the internet's dangerous, social media is dangerous. Doesn't always capture attention. Whereas, okay, maybe if I run down the side of the road
love
with my
this.
shirt off for 4 months, like somebody will care.
I love that. True.
That was part of the run too, is just looking for a different angle to get this message out.
Oh my goodness. I love that. It did. It definitely, like I said, I see in terms of fitness people all the time. Everything from bodybuilding to strongman. We've had, we've had Olympians on this podcast, and so I've seen all that. But when it said about the running, because I've only done half marathons, done 9 of them, don't plan on doing another one. But like, it's one of those things where to see that it immediately got my attention, but then it's like, keep kids safe online. So it's like, I'm kind of putting it together of like, okay, so, you have this mission, but then I was like, okay, how does that work? And so I love that you're piecing it all together for me. Cause like I said, I didn't want to DM this in a message. Like tell me your life story. Cause it sounds, it's so cool that something that came from such a negative, you've turned into a positive. Yeah. So when you went across with doing this, whatever, you were just on this big like bus, right? Yeah. Okay. Did you just like buy a bus and was like, let's roll out?
So we bought the RV.
Okay.
Which is, we could do a whole podcast just on RV life and campgrounds in America, which none of them are nice. We stayed in over 100 campgrounds and there's less than 5 that I would honestly recommend.
Yeah.
So we got the RV. I was originally going to rent one, but it's kind of like if you like lease a car where there's all these restrictions in terms of, what you can do to it, how far you can drive it. And then, we wanted to put a wrap on it because, the sponsors wanted that. And we were like, if we're going to do it, we might as well like tell people about it. Right. So to wrap it made more sense to buy one. So we bought it. We did the wrap. We had a map of the route in like the States.
Yeah.
And so anybody we would meet, we would have sign the side of the bus.
So cool.
And then on the back of the bus, we had 11 names of kids who've died from social media related stuff. Suicide after falling victim to an online predator or cyberbullying or fentanyl. Kids who did these choking challenges online. And so they were in states along my route.
Okay.
And so then I would interview those parents when I came through, and we'd have them like sign next to their child's name, and it would say like, Matthew Minor, which was the kid from Maryland who died from a choking challenge. Matthew Minor, forever 12. He was the youngest one who died that we had on the bus. And and the parents would write like their favorite Bible verse next to them, or like, I miss you. It's just so sad, but that was part of the mission too, is telling these stories, because it's really, for every parent who's willing to share something like this, there are hundreds, if not thousands of others who are dealing with the same things who aren't sharing them. So it was, let's use this mission and my kind of platform to help tell these other stories, and then hopefully encourage those conversations and encourage other parents who've dealt with this stuff to do the same.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I think that's just so cool. So it's just like, when you did this, like, did you go through like all the states, or did you go through only like the middle? Like, how did you do it? Like, I'm trying to imagine.
Yeah, so it was Highway 50 was the route, which is nicknamed the loneliest road in America.
Really?
Yeah. In Nevada, Utah, there's nothing out there. At one point in Nevada, I went 5 days without seeing a single home.
Oh, wow.
Just straight up desert, 100 degrees. And started in San Francisco, went up to Sacramento. That's where Highway 50 starts, is in Sacramento.
Okay.
And then just took that all the way across. So California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, then up through D.C., and then finish in Maryland.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah, 4 months.
Yeah, so 4 months, you said?
Yep.
Okay, so in total, how long is that? Like
3,125 miles total. So it was 120 marathons. And I was originally going to do it on 120 days.
Yeah.
But I was also speaking. I did
Okay,
50
yeah.
presentations at schools along the way too.
Wow.
And so there were a few days where, we'd have to drive an hour up to do the presentation,
Yeah.
and there'd be 4 or 5 of them so it just logistically didn't make sense. So it ended up being, when we were done, 120 marathons in 125 days.
Wow. That's incredible. The reason I knew, I was like, man, I'm going to like him so much. There was a clip of you eating pizza. It's where you stopped to get everyone else a slice or whatever. And I was just like, let's go, throwing down.
Yeah. So we had this list of all these foods that I was supposed to eat. And I did hire a coach, which is probably a different conversation, but it was super helpful for prepping and all that, and I kind of had to cede that control of
because no injuries, no anything.
No, got blisters early on and soreness, but no real injuries. But anyway, so she had made me this list of everything I was supposed to eat, which I did for the first month, and then the last 3 months was just basically anything I wanted. But the pizza thing, there's this gas station, and it's mostly a Midwest thing. There's actually one out here in Nashville, but it's called Casey's.
Okay.
And they're known for their pizza. And every little town in the Midwest has a Casey's.
Okay.
In my hometown, we had my hometown had 900 people. We didn't even have a stoplight. But we had a Casey's. So that was a thing. You go get a slice of pizza.
Okay.
So we saw the first Casey's when we got to the Midwest. And I told the crew, the 2 guys that were with me, I was like, I'm going to stop at every Casey's that I run by. And this is going to be a thing.
Oh
I'm going to eat a slice of pizza at every one I run by.
Yeah.
And there were days where there were 4 and 5 Casey's.
Oh my gosh. I cannot. That's awesome.
Yeah. So pizza, Uncrustables, kind of whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
It worked out to 6,000 calories a day on average.
Yeah. And so what was because was it pretty even every day? Because math is, not my strong suit. So was it every day you had a certain amount that you were trying to hit, or was it
mileage wise?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a marathon. So 26.2 each day. And so we would literally go, I'd run the 26.2, we'd drop a pin on our phone, and then we'd spray paint the side of the road. That's the starting point for tomorrow. And then when we got done, I'd either, go do the media stuff or the school presentations, and then we stayed in campgrounds the whole way.
Right.
And then the next day we just come back to where we dropped the pin and start there. Literally just on the side of the road.
Ben, what? Because I really was trying to figure it out, and I was like, whatever, I was just going to ask him, because I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah, and some people to conceptualize that it is difficult, but we just, I literally ran every single step the whole way.
Yeah.
So,
Were you trying to do it within a certain time, or were you taking your time, or were you trying to, do the marathon every single day?
So the hard part logistically was I was also doing these presentations at schools that I had planned ahead of time. And so I knew I got to be in Kansas City on Halloween.
Yeah.
Because there's 200 parents going to be there. They've changed the day of their school day so that I could speak. I had to be there.
But what a great thing.
That was
because you have deadlines, and then you're like, I have to.
Yes.
There's no, guys, I'm just today I'm a little sore. Yeah.
And there were some schools that were we reached out to them along the route. We're we'd love to do a presentation, and they were we can't commit to this because we're not sure you'll make it.
Oh wow.
It's okay.
And you're bet.
Yeah, I ran by and I went in the schools. The ones who said that, I went in there. I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm here.
That is so crazy. I love that. All right. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for subscribing to the Love Your Body podcast on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're listening. I appreciate you so much for sharing these stories, listening, and just, being a part of the DDF community. If you are interested in any challenges I have coming up, the Get Your Movement In Challenge is launching here soon, so stay tuned for that, as well as online programming. Would love to work with you from all over. And you guys, I'm just so blessed and so thankful for this season of time. Please, if you get a chance to share the mission submission, rate the podcast, whatever you want to do, comment, let us know what you think about it. We would love the support, and we're always looking for sponsors. So if you're someone that's listening right now and you want to get your business out there as well, we'd love to have you as a sponsor. And so let us know at Danny@DannyFitness.com.
My name is Ben Tracy. You can find me on Instagram at Ben J. Tracy, Ben Tracy on Facebook and YouTube as well. And the website is tracytrek.com.
But it's like, why, it's like go big or go home, right?
Right.
Like, and you really did that. And that's so incredible. So you just got back. I mean, literally
10 days ago.
Yeah. So when you got back, I mean, do you still feel like, because I can't relate on this level, but for example, I do these challenges where we do like steps a day, right? So like 10,000 steps a day, 12,000 steps a day. And sometimes I feel like I'm stepping and I'm not even stepping, right? Like I'm seated, but I'm like not, like, do you feel like you're still running? Like, do you feel like that was like a part of you that you gotta like, you need to go out and go run? Or are you like, I'm good for right now?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. There's no real script on how to do this because, so few people have done it. A lot of them are older. They've passed away now. And they did all different, the record is like 48 days. So this guy was running 60 miles a day for 48 days, the guy who holds the record for the fastest run across the country. And so there's really no script on how to train for it, how to actually do it, or what to do when you get done.
Right.
And so I'm still kind of figuring out the what to do when you get done. I went to I go to Fahrenheit Yoga in 12 South, which I love. So I've been there a couple times.
Nice.
I just got a membership to the Carbon out here.
That's where I go,
Yeah, you do. Okay, nice. So I like that.
Yeah.
I've done that. Yesterday I did actually run for the first time. I ran 7 miles.
Okay.
My body feels fine. I'm just pretty tired. I've taken more naps than the last 10 days.
Sure.
Plus with it actually worked out with it being right around the holidays was a good time to just take it easy.
No, it worked out really nicely. So, now that you're back, is it one of those things of, or have you already started thinking about other ways that you would do something like eye-catching like that? Or is it like, I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't. I don't know what it would be. People are like, one of the sponsors was like, we'll double the amount we sponsor the next time. I'm like, there's no next time.
Right. Yeah. You're like, this is who we are.
I talked with the crew who are both Nashville guys, the 2 guys that were with me the whole time and who are wonderful. And, there's no way I could have done it without them. But we talked maybe it's an event or a 5K or something like that in Middle Tennessee somewhere, but that hasn't been hashed out at all.
Right. So the crew, you said you had 2 guys. Would you just meet some random dudes and were like, hey, I got this RV. Do you want to come help video record? Drive? Was that what it was like?
So I knew the video guy already. He'd done some graphic design, some other work for me. And so I called him probably about a year ago now. Okay. And I was like, hey man, this is going to sound crazy. Because it was so crazy that it took me probably about 3 months before I even would say it out loud. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're kind of like me. You didn't tell anybody until you were like, we're already in motion pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so extreme. It's like everybody, even people who love me are going to tell me that this is stupid.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, they're right. They're not wrong. So I called Christian and I was like, hey man, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And he's like, I love it. He's like, I'm in. Within a couple days, I was like, all right, cool. I'm like, we need a driver as well. We need somebody who can cook. If we could find somebody who can do both those things, that'd be perfect.
Right.
And so I was thinking, either we find an older guy who maybe drove a semi or something has nothing to do now, or we find somebody who's a friend or closer to our age who's kind of just a bro.
Yeah.
Who probably doesn't know shit about a motorhome,
right.
Because finding somebody who's young and cool and also knows a lot about motorhome, that Venn diagram is two completely separate circles.
Oh my gosh.
And so he introduced me to this guy, Seth, who's just a super chill guy, pretty good vibes. And he said he was a really good cook, and I didn't know, but I believed him. And so I was like, all right, man, let's give it a go. And he'd never driven an RV until we left Nashville to start this run. And so there was a lot of that's what I told people along the way. I'm like, if you have to bet on which is more likely to make it to Maryland, me or the RV, I would bet on me.
Yeah, I love that so much. So it was just you three on there. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, so the video guy, he took care of your, the Instagram stuff you did, and then kind of documented the whole thing.
Yep. The whole thing.
So is the document, is that like a documentary on somewhere, or is it?
It will be.
Okay. Cool.
And we're kind of figuring out that whole process and timeline and all that. So I'm meeting with him later this week about kind of what the next steps are. Because it's weird. Like, you do something like this and then it's over and you're just like, what do I do now?
Right.
Oh,
but
we have all this content. He's got, I don't know, a dozen hard drives, 20, 30,000 photos, something like that. And now it's like, all right, well, what do we do with this?
So when because I'm trying to imagine this too, I know that you did a lot of interviews along the way, and so he captured that, but of you actually running, was he beside you at all, or getting you running?
Yeah, so a lot of times when they would go up every 4 or 5 miles.
Okay.
And we had one of the Starlink internet things. So they would go up, they'd put that Starlink out. He would work. Okay. I would run up. The driver would come out with food. And, so I was eating every 4 or 5 miles. Gotcha. And so, he was, when I would run up, he would document some of that. Yeah. And then he also had rollerblades. Okay. And he would rollerblade.
That's what I was imagining in my head. Me. Someone beside you. I love that. Okay.
So that's how we did it.
Very cool. So I'm assuming that with the sponsorships that you had, was that kind of because to do something like this, if someone's listening, wow, I could never have the funds, or I could never, step away from things. Were you did you have savings, or were you just no, I'm going to get the sponsors to pay for all of this? And then
it was a combination. Okay. I'll say it was more expensive than I anticipated. There was always an unexpected cost, especially with the RV. And so, I spent a lot of personal money. Okay. Now, I'm sure it will pay for itself in the long term in terms of other opportunities I have and speaking engagements and, the documentary, all these different things. But we also had sponsors as well. Yeah. One of them was it's called Bark. So they make a safe starter phone for kids, parental monitoring software, stuff like that. So they were all about it. So that was one of the big ones.
If y'all mind me asking, and you may not can answer it, but were any of them we won't sponsor this, if you don't make it, because you could have came to them with this idea and been I'm gonna go do this, and then they're here's all this money.
The only people who turned me down on that were all fitness companies,
of course.
And so
I believe that 100%.
The Bark, I went to them. I said, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do. It's about online safety. There's several online safety companies out there. One of them is going to sponsor this because this is awesome.
Exactly.
Somebody's going to jump in on this. You guys are the best. You're the most well-known. I like your product the best. Right. I would love for it to be you. And they came back within a couple days and they said, we're in. Yeah. They didn't say, if you don't finish. I mean, I could have taken their money and never even started. And I don't know, so there was none of that. They didn't even ask me, you have to make this many posts. You have to do anything like this.
Best. Yeah.
And I mean, they're just wonderful partners. Yeah. Whereas, and then, start okay, well, there's these fitness companies who I thought we had an alignment of values, and we reach out to them, and then there's all, they're we'll send you 1 bucket of protein if you post about us 3 days, 3 times a week, and all this, there's all this stuff. And it's wait, I'm doing way more for you than what you would for me.
Right.
And so I don't know enough about the fitness industry to know if that's standard.
That's very so when I I do mentorship for people who are trying to grow their brands and who are trying to either because I've seen what I've been able to do with influencerships and stuff, and literally I always tell people that the whole affiliate code and all the stuff, it's just nonsense. It just is more a status for people to be oh, I represent this brand. And for me, I've had so many of those opportunities, and I'm if I don't believe in this, then it's not going to be genuine anyway, and it's just going to be gross, and I don't want to do it, Right. But some of the best things that I've had have been the ones that are look, post about it if you love us, if not, or just send your people to us. That would be great, and that's why I always tell people I love working with, because it's they know the value, because they're you will send and tell everyone about us, because it should be that real authentic thing. But a lot of people
want to tell people about it. It's not because you have to.
Exactly.
And the people you're pitching on it, they can read that anyways, I feel like.
Exactly. And that's why I always try to keep it real with them, because it's even with the No Bull sponsorship, they reached out about stuff. I was I've been wearing y'all shoes for literally 7 years. Yeah. Strongman competitions, always in No Bulls. everything like that. So for me, it was already made sense. It just was easy. It was, you know what I mean? And versus this whole thing of like, get 15% off of these shoes. Like, you know, I just so cringe to me.
Right.
And again, and it wasn't a true partnership. So that is unfortunately very common in the fitness industry. And a lot of it is because I know there are people out here that are chasing for clout and that just want to look like that they're up here. You see what I mean? So they know they can get away with it. So it's like, if I got to apply to the program, I'm not going to be a part of it. Either you want to support, like I used to do fitness festivals for St. Jude, right? Raise money for them. And I would always like reach out to people and they'd be like, oh, well, we'll do this for this. It's like, guys, no. And so I learned very quickly on, I was like, either you want to be a part of it and like understand that like you're going to get value by being a part of it, or no,
right?
You know? So it is very hard. I think people get very, overwhelmed because they just think that's the way it has to be from certain brands, and they kind of bully people and whatever. And it's just,
it did. It felt, and I didn't know enough about it, but it felt like predatory to me. I told the crew, I'm like, let's just go get money from like some business and then I'll just buy whatever I want.
Right.
You know, I'm like, I would rather go to some actual business or person who believes in what we're doing and get them to give, even if they only give us $1,000, okay, well, that buys me 8 pairs of the A6 shoes that I know that I want to wear, as opposed to like going and wearing something that I don't want, I don't believe in, whatever.
So it sounds like you went about it the right way and you trusted your guy on that.
I'm like, it just didn't make, I don't know. I just kind of didn't agree with it. And once I started kind of learning more about how the fitness industry kind of works.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, brands like mine are trying to change the situation, right? To help people actually realize that, you know, you can love your body through movement. You don't have to hate it to be, you know, SKI-NY. Like, you don't have to look a certain way to have value. If you want to go run a half marathon, cool, train for it, go do it. If you want to do a strongman competition, okay, go sign up. Like do it in a smart way. But like, just because you look a certain body type doesn't mean you can't do those things.
For sure.
So and I wanted to ask this because you've been, you know, so you've been athletic pretty much your whole life, would you say?
Yeah, I played all the sports growing up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you feel like, you know, like in any of that, like, was there any part of this process where you felt like you maybe doubted yourself or doubted your abilities at all? Or did you just feel like, I'm going to trust my body, I'm going to trust in this? Like,
yeah, it was. So I hired a coach. Her name's Jill Dennis. She's an ultra runner here in Nashville. She's very successful. She's very good at it. And so it was a little bit difficult to like, I trusted her, but to see that control, because if I couldn't do this physically, nothing else mattered, right? The names on the back of the bus were, you know, the interviews, all that didn't matter if I couldn't physically do it. And then, you know, with those families that we were honoring with this, you know, when you they've already lost their child. And so when they give you the opportunity to honor their family's name and put their kid's name on the back of your RV, to me, it was, once I made the decision I was going to do that, I was like, I cannot quit. Like, something, you know, I could get hit by a car or bit by a rattlesnake or something like that, but I will never quit just because it's hard. And so like, that was completely off the table. You know, but I've thought about like, well, if it was just about me, I think the quitting would have been a lot easier. But you still have that doubt of like, anybody who would go into something like this and say, hey, there's 100% chance I'm going to make it, is lying, you know, because so many things could go wrong, not just physically, but, you know, somebody could have hit the RV while it was on the side of the road, or, you know, I mean, there's a million different things that could have gone wrong. So, I mean, there was definitely doubt, but there was also confidence of, okay, I've done the training, I've done the work, but you can never train to that level of 183 miles a week either. And so it's like, how's my body going to hold up?
Well, that was like with strongman, that was the biggest thing of, we always trained like as close to the weight as possible. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to like max out right before, obviously, a competition and stuff like that. And even if you wanted to, because we've had a strongman on the podcast here recently, and we talked about like, even if you wanted to practice a 1,000-pound tire flip or a 500-pound tire flip, you couldn't find those anywhere. So you could only practice on 350-pound. So it's like, you don't know till you're there, right? So I do get that in that element of like, but it keeps it exciting. Because if you just did the same thing over and over again, you get bored with it and everything like that. So I do want to ask this too, because for anybody listening, like, that's probably been in my shoes where I've ran without headphones before, and it was awful, but I still did it. Did you run with?
I wore headphones the entire way. Some people would say that's not running. Like some of these marathons, they don't allow you. I'm like, the ultra marathons, it's like a thing.
Yeah.
I'm running the trails. I'm gonna like get in touch with myself out here, and like, I don't know. I ran all the way across the country, and I never really felt the runner's high either.
Really?
People talk. I don't know. I mean, I didn't like. I still am kind of like, like? Somebody's like, "Are you a runner?" I'm like, "Yeah, like I run, but I don't like kind of categorize myself as that."
That's so funny.
But because I'd only done, I think 2 or 3 ultras.
Okay.
I think two full marathons, a bunch of halves, but it wasn't like I was out doing a full marathon or an ultra every weekend.
Right. Well, and I think that just goes to show like your athleticism as a whole, though, of training for strength and training for like things like that, because that's why I tell a lot of my clients is like a lot of them will say like, oh, I could never run a 5K or something like that. And I'm like, no, like you could right now. You just maybe wrecked afterwards because, again, we're dealing with injuries or we're dealing with, different things. So I'm like, no, you're physically, by the way I train you, able to do that. It's just more so a mental thing. Right. And so again, when you were preparing for this, were you like, okay, you're strength training, you're getting your body as healthy as you can, mindset, everything like that. So, I think that's why when you are athletic, like you can go do amazing things and do incredible things. It's just maybe you don't feel like you categorize yourself as a runner. Like I get that is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. Like, and I still don't even really have the runner's build. Like I was telling somebody that yesterday. I'm like, I look like I run, but I look like I lift weights, but I also look like I'm not very good at either one of them.
Okay, I love that you said that because I kind of was thinking that. I'm not trying to be mean. Like,
no,
but when I
saw
you,
that.
like, I was like, just keeping it real. Like, I'm like, but again, it's so great though because I love those type of people.
Yeah.
Like, because I hate when people categorize and like, oh, dancer, runner, strongman. It's like, no, you don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Until they're in it. And that's why it's so beautiful. And movement is like my passion. And I've, and movement, I talk about this a lot, like has saved my life, and so that's why I feel like for me, even going to talking in schools and talking to young girls, especially to say that there needs to be a component of movement throughout your journey to love yourself. I think that the two go hand in hand.
For sure.
And so anyway, so I just, it's so funny, but like I've kind of lived that life too, of where people never really knew like, okay, does she like lift, but does she run? Does she like, what does she do? And it's really that you can't care either which way.
Right.
You just got to be good with what you got.
Yeah.
And be confident in it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've been joking with people that I'm going to be the first guy to run across the country and gain weight doing it because I was eating 6,000 calories a day of just junk, and it was like 10 times the normal daily recommended sugar I was intaking.
Yeah.
So that wasn't great.
I just can't believe that your body like doing that much, like something that high stress, like that you would even be able to like that. Is that not kind of crazy, or am I just the only one sitting here thinking like?
No,
because I know you need the carbs and like the raw carbs and the raw calories and stuff,
yeah.
but like. I mean, you're not eating carbs and then going and like doing a lift or like you're running 26 miles and then tomorrow you're gonna do it again and like I don't know, it's just insane that your body like was able to, and that was a question that I wrote down. Like pretty much everything that you said is like honestly is kind of a breeze.
Yeah, like the way he talks about.
I mean,
yeah.
So what? Just to be super direct with it, what was the hard? Was there a particular run that you remember? Was there a and a lot of times,
was there a day that you were just like,
that was like,
nah,
really,
I ain't got it.
We got to try to pull this out of you. You ran across the country. We're like, please tell me something that was difficult.
We were talking about with the crew, like they're like the video guy was like, I have to capture every second when it is awful because there's so few of them. He's like, you really handle things. And he's like, even to us, you can be like, you can tell us when it sucks. And that's just like not me that much of like, I kind of just try and wear it as well as I can. The hardest things, Monarch Pass in Colorado was like 11,500 feet.
Wow.
That was tough. I had a day in West Virginia it was about 4,000 feet of elevation gain, and it was, I think, 5 degrees outside.
Wow.
And so there were no shoulders on the road either. So you only have about this much area to run in, and it's these windy, hilly roads, right? And then it had snowed up in the mountains, so they had plowed the road. So the shoulder was snow packed and ice packed. So I'd get on the road. Anytime a car would come, I'd get back over into the snow, wait for him to pass, get back on the road. So that was tough. Surprisingly, Kansas was hard.
Okay.
It's very flat, but it's also windy. So this place, Dodge City, Kansas, like the saying, like you got to get out of Dodge. That's Dodge City.
That's real.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
wow.
where that came from. Is they say the windiest place in America, and they also what they're known for is these slaughterhouses. So they slaughter cows there.
Okay.
And somebody told me that and I don't know if this is true, but they slaughter 15,000 cows a day in this town.
Gosh.
And so they have to get to the slaughterhouse somehow. And that's on these cattle haulers, which is a semi, but there's like opening, like air can pass through there and the cows are all in the back on the way to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
So you're running by these things. Because the air can pass through there, it hits you harder than like if a semi, you feel it a little bit.
Yeah.
Every one of these was like running like into a brick wall. And then not only that, but there's cow shit coming off the, off the thing too.
Gosh.
So that's like hitting you, the wind's hitting you. So yeah, Kansas wasn't a great experience.
Okay. Wow. So let me ask you this. How long did you say that you took to prepare for this? Like in terms of getting everything ready? Because I didn't even think about that it would be cold in some areas or that it would be, so you have to have different shoes, different attire, all of that.
Yeah.
So how long did that take to prepare?
Probably 9 months of training.
Okay.
Probably 6 months of planning all the logistics.
Okay.
And honestly, we didn't have it all figured out. Like we stopped at Dick's Sporting Goods along the way to
pick up
buy
some extra
more
stuff.
running
Yeah.
tights and more shoes and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and how old are you?
31.
31. Okay. So about 30, you started planning this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably around this time.
Okay.
Right after the first of the year last year.
Super cool. Man, it's just amazing. So in terms of, kind of pivoting, like, with your day to day, do you tell people, or are you just like, I'm a public speaker? Like that is how people know you by, and like with all the schools, or?
Yeah. If somebody asks like, what do you do? I just say I keep kids safe on the internet. Like the one sentence kind of Cliff Notes version of it. Because, it takes a lot of different forms, right? It's the speaking engagements in schools, but now we're doing stuff on AI. I've got a guy who works with me on, kids they're like voice cloning their parents and calling themselves out of school using
way.
AI. They're doing the same thing to their teacher and like making it say like this offensive stuff in the teacher's voice and then uploading that. They can like create nude images. It used to be somebody actually had to have a nude image to pass around the school. Well, now they'll like take a picture and then use AI to generate a nude image. That it's not like the old ones where it was like they like take it and copy and paste.
Yeah,
and
no,
this
it
is
looks
not the same person.
real.
But these are like much more legitimate. And so there's like stuff like that. And so we're working with schools on their tech policies and AI policy and implementing phone restrictions during the school days and things like that of like how to roll that stuff out. And so it takes a lot of different forms, but that's what I tell people is I just keep kids safe online.
I love that. So, and a lot of times people, I think, listening to this, because like I know a lot of my, when people say that like an expertise comes from like actually living it, right, and going through it. And so for me, that's where I built my whole platform and everything like that. But with you, was it like, have you lost anybody, like for kids wise? Like, have you known anybody personally like that, or was it more so you got into this because you lost the job?
I had my own experience, and then I started hearing these kids' experience. And it was just like, why isn't someone doing something about this? And these kids were coming up to me and they're sharing this stuff with me. And they're saying, I've never told anybody this before. Yeah. And like, I hope you can help me. Like, I've been exposed to this predator and, I didn't know how to tell my parents, right? Because, if you think about it from the kid's perspective, it's like, A, they're addicted to their phone and don't want to have, if they go to an adult, it's probably going to get taken away. So that discourages a lot of it. And it's just an awkward conversation to go to your parents, say, somebody sent me this or I sent that or, what have you. Yeah. And so these kids are telling me this stuff. And then it was like incumbent upon me to like do something about it, go to their principal or their counselor at school and, explain to their parents how to report this stuff to the police and, all of that. So that's been kind of the motivation. It's just, I've been doing it 6 years. I've heard 10,000 of these stories.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. I just love this. Like, it's so it's so powerful and it needs to be done. But it's, again, I feel like a lot of people are just like kind of with the whole mindset of about like loving your body. It's kind of like that shrug of the shoulder, like, that's a good notion. That's a good idea. That's a good thought. Like, oh, in a perfect world, like I've literally had friends tell me that society's never going to change.
Right.
So they're like, what you're doing, like, that's great. Like, good for you. But like, it's actually not. And I'm like, no, but it can.
Right.
If everybody thought that way, it certainly wouldn't.
Right. But that's the thing is, I mean, we've had people sit on this couch that have known me for 7-8 years. And they're like, Daniel, like, I just got it. Like, I just understood a month ago what it meant to love my body throughout. Like, and so do you ever get frustrated or do you ever get kind of sad? Like, do you deal with that a lot?
For sure. Because there are times it feels like an impossible battle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not even with the kids so much as the parents.
Yeah.
It's like, I thought, okay, well, I'm 31. When my friends start having kids, like, we kind of got it towards the end of like high school and but towards the end of our teenage years. And a lot of us dealt with some version of this through our 20s.
Right.
And like, surely when people my age start having kids, they're not going to give their kids these phones at such a young age and social, but they are.
Yeah.
And so like, that's been a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah.
And there is an element of like, well, if their own parents don't care, why should I spend 4 months running across the country, or why should I spend 200 nights a year in hotels like I did last year? If they're, if the own adults that are closest to them don't care. But to your point, nothing's going to change if somebody doesn't do something about it. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like too, you have to see at least someone. Like when I was growing up, I didn't really see any women that looked anything like me. Right. And so when I was always kind of put to the side or like a dance being like, oh, like the larger girls in the back or like the taller girl in the back, all this stuff, whatever. It was kind of like, okay, but like, so you deal with these things and you don't know how to like understand it. And you're just like, okay, well, let me look somewhere else. Can I see, is there somebody out there like me? And I never saw that. Yeah. I saw Jillian Michaels or I saw, I never saw the Kaisa Fitz or any, the newer, the Danny Spiegels and like all of those people. And you're like, man, I wish that could have happened or could have seen that representation. So it sounds like that's what you're doing. You're being that representation in this space. And
that's the goal.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much.
I just want to ask real quick before we go to the next segment. From the parents' perspective, this is maybe a very direct way to say this, but when you come into those situations, I'm sure it's also super frustrating if their kid just told you a story. You're like, I really would love to do something about this.
Right.
And you won't even, basically kind of won't let me do it because you won't do what's necessary or whatever. So to put it simply, my question is, when you find parents that are borderline negligent in that way, is it because they're lazy or ignorant?
He's like, let me think about this, how to say it.
I think some are lazy. A smartphone and an iPad is a good babysitter. And so, especially now, a lot of parents are separated. And so it's like, makes sense to, or at least in their mind, makes sense to give, one of these devices to their kids. So there's an element of laziness. And there's also, I think, an element of ignorance. And some of it feels to me like willful ignorance. Like, okay, I know that this isn't good, but well, if everybody else is doing it,
exactly, it's a societal pressure. Right. It's how you do things. It's everyone gets Botox because, well, who doesn't? That's lazy. Right? Like, or like,
that's lazy.
like
intellectually, that's lazy. That's like.
But again, too, okay, let's you're not a dad, right? No. Okay, so like, none of us are parents in here yet. Yeah. So for anyone listening that is a parent. Again, we have not been in those shoes yet. We haven't had the privilege of raising children.
100%.
So for me, I look at it. I mean, I have a very healthy lifestyle. I'm very regimented. I'm very routine. I would love to hope that that's how it would be with a child and having them. But I see how my brother and with the nephews and nieces and all of them, but like, definitely would want my kids to be in sports and things like that. But I mean, they've had to wrestle. I mean, my nephews and nieces are homeschooled, live on a farm, and they've had Snapchat and Instagram and all this stuff. You know what I mean? It gets to them.
Right.
Like, it's because their cousins do. And you see what I'm saying?
Well, that's the thing. And that's why I tell parents, even if you're not giving your kid this stuff, well, guess what? The kid sitting next to your kid is on it. So you still got to have these conversations, even if you're not giving it to your own kid.
Right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the LYB podcast. If you haven't yet, please go check out the How to Love Your Body Throughout book on Amazon. This is my very first book. I am so proud of it. It is a short read. You can also get it on Kindle, so it's not a huge commitment, but it is something of a self-help book. So if you're someone who is looking for support, you're looking for tools, you're looking for just a way to feel better during this holiday season and into the new year, I definitely recommend it. I put my heart and soul into this, and this is just the start. So if you haven't yet, go on Amazon and get your first copy. I think that it goes back to something that I was thinking about like the comparison, right? Sure. And that kids, that's all they're seeing. And that's the same thing with like parents too. They're comparing to how so-and-so is raising their kid. And they live in this. And again, I think, and you can tell me if you think differently, but I think that stems from a lack of like, really a truly of insecurity in how they're raising or judgment or whatever. Because it's like, oh, all the kids got these certain shoes for Christmas, but my kid didn't.
Right.
So now they're going to be without. And not to say that that's not a parent caring, because they don't want you to feel less than, but it's also like when you put that pressure, I feel like kids feel that too. And so now you got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to have the best iPad, the iPhone, all these things. So I think that it goes back to if we can have stronger people in a sense of loving themselves, we wouldn't have to deal with this. You know what I mean? And when I tell people that, they're always like, okay. Like they always kind of like don't really get it. And that's why I talk about loving yourself, because it's also too, why do a lot of my girls, that come to me and stuff like that have gone through hardship with relationships, right? And they're like, I don't know why this person cheated or why this has happened or whatever. And it's like, because they didn't love themselves.
Yeah.
And they were trying to use you to fill this void, right? I think social media is the same way. Everyone wants to look like I think I put on this post the other day. I said, how about in 2025, we stop looking like we have it all together and we actually have it all together?
Yeah. One of the best compliments I got before I started this run, wasn't doing much social media. A friend of mine, he's more into like that, like kind of like Nashville, like fitness kind of guy. And he's like, you know what the difference between me and you is? He's like, you have a good life and a bad social media. I have a good Instagram and a not great life.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's the
like,
truth.
That seems like a backhanded compliment, but I appreciated it.
Yeah.
But as it relates to the kids, something like 90% of teenage girls edit their photos before they post them, right?
Yes.
And so,
but that's what I'm saying. It's a learned behavior, and it's this idea of the perfection, and that was the biggest thing that I've seen. And it's like with the filters, and so I've always told people like I don't edit my stuff, like it's what it is. I tell photographers don't touch don't make me look any type of way. Like this is who I am, whatever. And I just feel like they don't have someone to look up to that does that. And so they think that that's normal.
Well, and it's actually quantifiable too, right? So, when their parents were in school, there was an argument to be made, at least that's the way these kids think about it. Who's the prettiest person in school? Who's the most popular person in school? Well, in these kids' mind, it's the kid who has the most followers on TikTok or Instagram. That's the prettiest girl in school.
Yep.
Even though that may not be true,
right?
But in their mind, you actually can quantify it.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is when you said about the whole like your friend saying he has a good Instagram but a not so great life or whatever. Like there was a episode of something like Black Mirror a long time ago where it was like you basically rate people in real life, and like by your rating score, like you couldn't get a house or you couldn't get certain things because if you didn't have the amount of followers or amount of likes. And
that's what I was about to say is what drives me crazy about it's so true. It's so true, and we're all in this space. What drives me crazy is, from my perspective, seeing people that I know for a fact have fake followers be given opportunities over a number on a screen. They're not even real.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I know this person, but that's how powerful it is that this person may get a sponsorship that you've earned because of a number that they literally turned on a machine to get.
I had a school one time bring in a different speaker, an older guy who's kind of I won't get into who specifically it was, but anyway, they brought in this other speaker as opposed to me. And their reasoning was that he had a bigger following of parents, that he had more followers on his Instagram. I was like, the message is about is about that, why that's
Right.
not relevant.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're hiring.
Right.
You know, but even with the run, you know, people are like, you know, you need to do this and this and invite these influencers out to get a bigger following.
Yeah.
And, you know, logistically it didn't really
Right.
make sense with everything else we were trying to do.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, the more people who follow it, I guess that, you know, that helps spread the message too. Right. So
Yeah.
again, kind of a tool and a weapon.
But again, it's a fine line. And that's why I tell people too about, they're like, oh, it has to be you love your body or hate your body. That's not what this is.
Right.
You got to find a middle ground, because there's going to be some days that you don't love your body, you know, or there's going to be some days that you are frustrated with it. Right. That's normal. That's totally fine. It's more about finding the grace within yourself to be like, I'm fighting for what I want. So whether that's to be able to run more or feel stronger or, you know, lose body fat or whatever the goal is, as long as you're loving yourself throughout it, you're keeping the right intention, you're being more efficient with things, you're not going to, you know, yo-yo so much. You know, there's so many like benefits to it, right? So when it comes to the whole like follower thing, I've lived that. I know that. I've seen it, and it is so frustrating because it's almost like now you treat people differently. And I've watched it in real time. Like I've gone to some influencer events, so I've seen it. And and it's like, and you just kind of laugh about it because that is now, like I always talk about creating your own reality. That is their reality. They don't see it. Like, you know?
I think I even didn't totally account for, appreciate like how, like even within my own generation, like I got like the blue check mark on Instagram and like I never thought of like, that stuff's never been important to me.
Right.
But like the video guy like got it verified or whatever. And he's like, dude, you're going to be able to get way more girls in Nashville now.
Oh my gosh.
Because you have the blue check. And I was like, is that really a thing? And he's like, yes.
Yeah.
And then we were like FaceTime with somebody else. And they're like, yeah, that's a thing. I was like, I'd never thought about that.
Right.
Like from that person.
But that's the thing is,
That's so dangerous.
it's so dangerous.
It's so
Because-
superficial.
Because
Yeah.
think about the people who, for example, like I've gotten restricted more times than not.
Yeah, which is
me at 14.5% body fat and a bikini pisses somebody off on Instagram because they violate it and they block it every time.
Now you know what's on social media, and she's the one getting
And
shouted
I've
at.
been,
Think about that.
and like they've always
yeah.
been tasteful. It's like I'm posing, I'm doing whatever. There's been some where I'm in shorts and a sports bra, and it still will get flagged. Community violations, sexual activity.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm working out. Those are Bulgarian split squats. So, but again, it's like really. So, but that's happened to me constantly. So imagine, and we've known people whose accounts have been taken down and things like that, or suspended or whatever, and it crushes people.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
had 2.5
And
years
if you
worth
were
of work.
if you were 15 years old, or something that happened, and that happened, I mean, they're
my
like,
gosh.
okay, well, now I'm done.
Yeah.
There's no
Makes
way I
total
can rebuild
sense.
it, right?
Makes
Like,
total
so
sense.
it's just like, how can we continue to spread the message and spread that mission? And
Well, it's loving your body, but also like loving yourself and, you know, teaching kids, you know, and I mean, so much of this is like, you know, because some people would say, well, Ben's message is more high level, you know, when I don't go in and I don't do, hey, this is a little bit, but there's not a ton of, hey, do this exact setting on Snapchat to keep your kids safe. Like go and do this, do
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
do
yeah.
this. And like we have that stuff in other places and, you know, but I'm like, first of all, if I did that for every app, my speech would be like 3 weeks long.
Right.
As a starting point. But I'm like, so much of this goes back to loving ourselves,
Yeah.
loving our kid, teaching these kids the right values, how to be a human being.
Yes.
Like this one kid came out and he ran with me. He met me at a Casey's.
okay.
And he was with his parents and his two sisters. He came up. He was like one of the top cross country runners in the state of
wow.
Kansas. He had just left his cross country meet. He's like, dude, this is so awesome. Yeah. You know, he's getting recruited by like all the big schools. And so we're talking. He's like, I want to run a few miles with you. I'm going to go home, grab my
Heck
other
yeah.
running shoes, come back. And I'm talking to this kid, and his parents had moved here from the Netherlands with nothing, and had grown this cattle operation in Kansas to like 30,000 cows, and they sold it for millions and millions of dollars, and very successful family. And we're talking about this, and I'm asking him all these questions about which apps are you on? Do you have issues with this? And he said, no, not really. He's like, my parents just taught me to have a good soul. And it seemed, the kid was 17 years old,
Yeah.
and I was like, God, that's the most prophetic thing I've seen
Right.
this entire Like the most prophetic thing I've heard was from a 17-year-old kid in Kansas. But it's like, he's so right. Where it's like the nuts and the bolts kind of take care of themselves if we get the big picture stuff right. And I think that's where we're failing these kids more than anything, is like that the way these kids are parented. Yeah. And again, I'm not a parent. Like I lived in an RV for 4 months. Like, what the hell do I know? But these parents, so many of them want to be friends with their kids. Yeah. And they don't, more than they want to be their parents. Yeah. And so that's been like very eye-opening to me. Like, you know, in no world would I ever go home and say, you know, my teacher was wrong, my coach is wrong, my principal's wrong, and my parents would side with me over the principal, you know? And so that's all changed now, where the kid is always right and the coach is wrong. And, you know, an example that I share a lot is, you know, I had a high school basketball coach who was one of the winningest coaches in the history of the state of Illinois, was the most hard-ass coach that this guy chewed my ass more than anybody you can imagine, and anybody in my life by far. And coaches like that are gone. Yeah. You know, you can't coach that way anymore. Right. And those people have been run out. But that same guy also threw an event in my hometown when I decided I was going to run across the country. He had 200 people there in my little hometown. Him and his wife got on an airplane and flew from Central Illinois to San Francisco, California. And he followed me for the first 8 miles in this rental car, because our RV couldn't go up in the mountains where I started, and you know, right on the beach in California. And it's like, I think that we need to teach kids, like, the person who loves you and cares about you the most is the one who holds you to the highest standard. Yeah. The ones that the teachers, coaches, and even parents who let you get away with anything, they're not setting you up for long-term success. And I think that's being lost with this entire generation.
100%. And I love that you said that, because I even reflect back on that with like relationships, right? Of when people, I notice when people start to like pull back from training, or they, you know, they get in a relationship and they're like, oh, like things are, you know, this way or whatever, because they let, you know, the enabling start to come in, right? Like I love my parents. I love, you know, all of my family members and stuff like that. And I've always talked about that this is a hard conversation to have, but like you have to move more. You have to do, like, you can't just eat one time a day. You know what I mean? Like these things that we've lived and I've seen it, like it's just not healthy. Like I want longevity for you. I want us to have happy, healthy lives together, you know, all these things. And same thing with my nephews. Like I'll speak plain to them about stuff. Like, you know, like you can't be scared to take the next step. Like we got to move forward with life, you know, like if you fail, that's okay. Like those are conversations that I had, like what you're talking about, like from mentors and people that like, and other strong women in my life. And I will always remember that and think fondly on that, because it was stuff I needed to hear. Like, you know,
I think there's a shortage of truth tellers in our society right now.
Right. Because again, with the social media, because we really are, I mean, would you say we're the first generation, right? Of like that maybe that won't, I mean, well, maybe not us, but like the one under us that will not know what it was like to not have like social media.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. We have, you know, you're probably about my age, right?
Yeah.
And so we have this like line in the sand, right? Like what life was like before we were on all this stuff. And we remember that because we had most of our without it.
Right.
And our childhood. And then this is what it's like after, you know? And we kind of made that first adopter mistake. So I kind of say a lot of times that's what it's like, well, yeah, would I tweet those things now if I was high school? No, because we know more, the world's changed, you know, all these different things. But kids today, they haven't grown up in a world without a smartphone, you know? And so that's where it's so different. Is this is all that they know.
Yeah. And so I do want to get onto this real quick because we're getting to the last segment. Would you say, like, again, it could kind of put yourself a few years ahead or whatever, but like, let's say you get married, you have kids. Would you say that you're like age 13? Like for you, are you like not before age 18? Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I would say 14 for a phone, 15 for like the real, so, you know, YouTube, that's probably different. But like, and even like, I mean, obviously when I have kids, there will be different apps and things will change. But like if it was current, I would say Snapchat and TikTok not before 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Now, I go to these schools, and some of them will have me speak to 3rd to 5th graders, and I'll ask, how many of you are on Snapchat? And it's over half of them already, right? So that's where it's tough.
But also, I think that it was a marketing thing, too, because Snapchat tried to make it like, you know, like cute, like the dog ears or like the whatever, you know, this is a fun. But then when they started altering their faces, I was like, that's not what you look like. And that's a real reality check. I mean, I'm sure you see a lot of young boys and young men that are dealing with this, obviously, too. But especially with young girls, from like what I've been told and seen, I mean, it's like you talk about body dysmorphia, they have no idea what they actually look like. You know, and I'm in I sponsor like a pageant system, you know, whatever too. And a lot of the photos and things I see are very AI'd or like overly edited. And it's so hard for me to be like, you know what I mean? I've just always really tried to fight that narrative of, let me filter myself, let me put myself to look a certain way, because I want to remember myself when I'm 60, 70 years old. Like I want to look at a photo and be like, that was me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like that was a depiction of me, but like that, it wasn't like that I was so heavily edited that I didn't even know what I looked like, because then I have people coming to me like with such lack of, what's the word? Like self-esteem, that they don't even know how to operate. I mean, it relates to everything, their financial decisions, their relationships, their choices, and all of it. And it's this line that I feel like so many people are like, this is a separate issue. It's like, this is all intertwined. So what is something that, you know, as we're in 2025, like, are you, you know, hopeful for in terms of change? Or are you just like, I'm just going to keep on spreading the, message? Like,
yeah, I'm going to keep spreading the message, of course. We'll have the documentary come out. Yeah. I don't know kind of how long that's going to take.
Yeah.
I imagine if I can sit down and just focus for long enough that I will write a book at some point.
I love it. Yes.
And then, as far as the online safety stuff, people are becoming more aware of this. Yeah. There's a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which is a bestseller. I think it's sold over 1 million copies now. So parents are waking up to this stuff, and they're taking some initiative of, okay, let's get phones out of the classroom.
Yeah.
And even like legislation wise, things are happening, especially at the state level. Okay. And there's some stuff that went through Congress that didn't end up passing. But at the state level, they're trying to, ban it for a certain age. And the issue is all these companies are just that. Yeah. Right. And so they have massive lobbies. And so they spend like $50 million a year lobbying against any type of legislation that would keep kids safe. And then if any piece of legislation does pass, they have this trade organization, this front group basically, that files lawsuits saying that it's unconstitutional or, whatever it is. And so that's where it's really hard, is because on the safety side of it is, you have these parents who've lost children. You have a few people out there like me talking about this stuff. But, no one on our team has $50 million to put towards lobbying. And so that's where it's tough. And that's what I tell parents. I'm like, as it stands currently, it's up to you to, and even with any sort of restrictions, the kids will find a way to get around them, right? Or legislation. So like, it really comes down to you in your family. So but I have hope that we're turning the corner here and things are happening.
No, for sure. I mean, it sounds like you're doing an amazing job, and like I said, it's been so cool to just hear a little bit more of your why and your story.
Well, thank you.
I know you have a question to ask him about. So I just wanted to real quick, every once in a while, whenever it comes up specifically in certain verbiage, I like to share this poem. So I'm going to have you read it, because I get going really fast, and then I'm not very good at it.
Okay.
You'll get why I'm having you read it once you read it. And you can read it out loud to the mic if you'd like.
Okay. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Oh,
Love it.
That's why you're doing what you're doing.
100%.
And that's why the parents doing what they do, everyone that comes out, everyone that says something, every little, ripple that's made, you may not see it, but that's why you don't have to do anything other than telling your story and then liberate other people.
Yeah. So. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. I love the poem.
So I ask all of my guests that come on, what is something that you love about your body?
That I love about my body.
Yeah.
I mean, as it stands today,
Yeah.
I might have a different answer in a month from now, but right now I think I'm most proud of my feet.
Okay.
I don't know if that's an answer you get
of
often.
course. No.
But just the fact that
it's actually, yeah.
The fact that my feet held up for 4 months and 120 marathons, I got some blisters early on, but like a lot of people are like, your blisters are going to be horrible. Your feet are going to swell so much. You'll have to wear bigger shoes. And I didn't have that. So, I would say I'm most proud of my feet on New Year's Eve 2024.
I love that so much. So no, that's fantastic. And it's again, a lot of times people say like their legs because it helps them move around every day or you know what I mean, or whatever it might be. And so no, that was perfect. Man, I just feel like I have so many more things that I want to ask you, Ben, but I'm just, like I said, I'm so excited to see what you accomplish and continue to keep growing this. And if there's anything that Dandy Fitness or myself obviously can help with, please let me know.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time to do this. And I told you off camera, I wasn't really planning to do interviews or media, taking a little while off, but the fact that it was local was part of it. But the other part that I didn't tell you off camera, your spirit and your energy, which I think you do a really good job of transferring that, going back to the social media part of like, I think it is hard to, to feel like, oh, I know this person, or I can, transfer energy through Instagram or through a phone. But I think you do a really amazing and beautiful job of that. And that's something that I noticed like very quickly. And I was like, I want to make the time to do this, even though it's kind of in my little hibernation period after I got done. So
thank you.
I just want to say, I appreciate that. And I'm grateful for that. And thanks for taking the time to have me on.
Of course, Ben, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And until next time.